You're in that
Are you starting? You gonna start?
Thank you for coming to the April 8th meeting of the Joint Committee on Implementing Measure 91. Tonight we have some interesting testimony regarding we have public hearings on a couple of bills, and I know that some of our committee members are still going to be coming in, but out of respect for your time and the fact that many of you have been waiting for a while, we're going to get started. So I would like to open the public hearing on Senate Bill 479 and also on Senate Bill 480, and ask Adam Crawford, our committee administrator, to introduce the bills, please.
Madam Co-Chairs, members of the committee, Senate Bill 479 creates a task force on the clinical research of cannabis, requires the task force to study and provide a report on the development of the medical cannabis industry, specifies the topics to be addressed in the report, requires the report to be submitted to interim committees, the interim committee of the Legislative Assembly relating to health care, no later than September 15th, 2016. The bill sunsets on December 31st, 2016, declares an emergency, and is effective on passage. Senate Bill 480 establishes a clinical research cannabis board as a semi-independent state agency, specifies board roster, rules, duties, and powers, requires the board to submit a report to the governor, Senate President, Speaker of the House, and legislative fiscal officer not later than April 1st of each even-numbered year, specifies the report must include long-term strategic plans and progress towards the completion of the board's duties. The committee is being asked to consider the -1 amendments to Senate Bill 480. The -1 amendments replace the measure. It creates a task force on the clinical research of cannabis, requires the task force to study and provide a report on the development of the medical cannabis industry, specifies the topics to be addressed within that report, requires the report and recommendations for legislation be submitted to the interim committees of the Legislative Assembly relating to both health and marijuana no later than December 15th, 2015, and again no later than September 15th, 2016. The bill sunsets on December 31st, 2017, declares an emergency, and is effective on passage.
Well, thank you very much. We are very fortunate because I realize that we have Senator Edwards here to testify, and I was going to stand at ease because I hadn't seen that you weren't in the room, but thankfully our good colleague and a great member of the legislature, Senator Edwards, is here, and if you're ready, sir, we would love to invite you to introduce. We've opened a public hearing on both Senate Bill 479 and 480. If you'd like to say some introductory remarks, we'd love to hear from you, and then you'll be pleased to know we've got a whole bunch of good people who want to share some views about the bill, too.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity. Chris Edwards, State Senator from Eugene, and I'm running a meeting next door, and
yes.
We've got, so I truly will be as brief as possible. So after Measure 91 was passed, I was approached by a Eugene company who was interested in medical research of cannabis, and I met a local woman whose son has epilepsy, and they had moved from out of state, I believe from the state of Idaho, for Oregon's medical marijuana program, and her son, with a really small dose of medical marijuana that I believe was administered with a shot, found her or his symptoms of epilepsy greatly mitigated. Went from over 100 seizures a day down to fewer than 10. But he needed these shots every, I believe, 3 hours. And of course, the current medical marijuana laws don't allow for the administration of these shots on school property. So she was faced with coming to school, taking her son at least 1,000 feet away from the school, administering the shot midday, bringing him back. But the point isn't the point of the story isn't about our current medical marijuana laws. The point of the story is that there's really some real benefit to this as a medicine, to marijuana as a medicine in many cases, and we just don't know that much. So we brought to you Senate Bill 479 and 480 to try to move the discussion forward, and it seemed like the timing was right with the passage of Measure 91. Senate Bill 479 was drafted as a task force to study the development of a medical marijuana industry that focused on the medicinal efficacy of medical marijuana aimed at meeting the needs of individual patients. Senate Bill 480, on the other hand, was originally drafted, would have created a semi-independent board, the Clinical Research of Cannabis Board. While I still think that that is a worthwhile idea, I think that we need a little more time to allow for this committee and OLCC to establish some ground rules. And you know better than I how much you're dealing with in the implementation of Measure 91. So we just don't want to be forgotten, and we want this to continue to move forward. So the Dash Ones create a task force that will be charged with studying and reporting on the development of a medical cannabis industry that provides patients with medical products that meet individual patient needs. The Dash 1 states that this bill states all that this bill is aimed to do. For instance, this task force can identify barriers and solutions to medical research, identify valid research from other states, find solutions to legal barriers for institutions to do this work, and much more. But I want to conclude by saying that it's really the intent to really facilitate the public policy and the legal framework in the state of Oregon to do medical research for marijuana. We don't know just how beneficial this can be as medicine, but if we establish the legal framework, and we're one of the early movers on that here in this state, we've had a number of stories of venture capitalists that would like to invest in this type of research here, and it could really become a world-renowned hub for that type. And when you talk about getting the value add out of the implementation of Measure 91, I think that one of the largest value adds for the state and for the state's economy is going to be in things like medical research. So I'll wrap up there. I know there are a number of people here to testify, and get ready to head back to my committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have any questions for Senator Edwards before he heads off? Okay, thanks. I just would like to, though you're a great witness, and you were also a great witness to the fact that there was a moment when all 5 of the House members were here, and, I won't even ask you to weigh in on how many of the senators were there, but it's lucky that you were here.
Madam Co-Chair?
Yes, sir.
I was in his committee right before here.
All right.
He was.
But we're really excited that you brought these bills, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So now we're moving into the public testimony portion of our hearings, and we'll start, please, with Mike Rocklam and Mowgli Holmes. And Jeremy Plum, please, as the first 3 witnesses. Hi, gentlemen. It's nice to see you. You're all experienced witnesses, but if you could please begin by stating your name for the record. Mr. Holmes, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll have the other 2 go in whatever order you like.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mowgli Holmes. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer of a Portland biotech company called Phylos Bioscience. We are studying the cannabis genome. And I'm also a board member of the Cannabis Safety Institute, which is a national group working on developing science-based safety testing standards for cannabis laboratories. So we're very, very much in favor of Oregon State support for research on cannabis. The main thing that I want to talk about is why that's really difficult to do. And we have some solutions for how to make it work. So right now, this plant that is potentially creating all of these medicinal compounds for all of these different kinds of ailments and is fueling this sweep of changes in the law across the country is of all the species on the planet, it's one that we know the least about because it's almost impossible to do research on it. So, research programs that have been done illicitly in the last few years have led to breeding of new varieties that have medicinal properties that cannabis didn't used to have. And that's why all of this is happening now. Research programs that change how people grow it and change what we know about how it interacts with patients have also led to all of this, but we still know very little, and there's really no, I think it's just more complicated than people realize how to do real research on a federally scheduled substance. So there's 2 other states in the country that have tried to do something like this. So both California and Colorado earmarked about $8 or $9 million and set up little groups to try to fund some basic clinical cannabis research. Colorado, even, they formed a grant-making body under the Department of Health there, and they reviewed grant applications and they awarded a lot of the grants. But most of those investigators still haven't seen that money because to do research on cannabis in a way that involves real researchers who are associated with universities, you need to quarantine them from the university somehow, because universities have instructed all of their universities, especially in Washington, Colorado, and Oregon, have instructed all of their people not to do extension work relating to cannabis, not to touch it in any way, and they're worried that all of their federal funding will be at risk. So there's 2 kinds of research, really. There's commercial research that companies can do, and there's public research, and we need public research into the safety issues around cannabis, mold and pesticides on the plant side, and the medicinal value on the human subject side. And companies can do a lot of this research, but the public good research, that stuff gets done by universities in the normal world. And we can say that we want to fund it, but it's just complicated. So to do so, we can make a commercial license so companies can do research, and that proposal is also being put forward elsewhere. And we can make some kind of public research thrust that I think this bill is reaching for. But to do that, we're going to have to face the fact that to bring in real academic quality researchers, we're going to have to make an institute that is state-supported and state-protected and kind of separated from the universities, and takes researchers and lets them walk away from their federal funding and have a safe state-sponsored place to do this. And there's one other way to do it, which is that the OHA is getting drawn back into all of this. They're going to be accrediting the safety testing labs. They are uniquely equipped to do research on cannabis. They have all the tools that they need to do some of the basic studies that we need right now on pesticides and mold to figure out how to do safety testing. They would be the kind of place that could house a research grant program, that could fund some kind of institute that brings in people from universities and that even does research internally. I think I just want people to realize that the only way to really make this work and to really put Oregon at the forefront of this whole idea of really bringing cannabis research into the normal, modern, scientific world is we have a commercial research license, and then we have some public research that would probably have to be driven by the OHA and funded through the state. And a structure that lets commercial and private cooperation happen, and that just really takes into account the realities of what it means to do research that's federally illegal. So it's complicated, but I think we could do it if we leaned on the OHA a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Co-chairs, commissioners, it's an honor to be here. I'm very grateful to be back
Could
again.
please state your name for the record. That'd be great.
I'm sorry, what was that?
State your name for the record.
Great. My
please.
name is Jeremy Plum, and I'm involved with a project called Pharma. Pharma is spelled with an F, and the idea is to bring the pharmaceutical back to the farm in a way. I believe that we stand at this incredible juncture that many people are not realistically assessing, and I'm aware of many people in this room actually being the most progressive and understanding the real impact we can have if we leverage resources well in a research capacity. I've been working with cannabis since I was 15 years old. I was volunteering in the Bay Area for a clinic that eventually was one of the first dispensaries after the passage of Prop 215. They were exclusively serving cancer and AIDS patients, and I firsthand witnessed the unbelievable transformative experience of the patients who received the benefit of the phytocannabinoid therapies and those that did not. That was a very radicalizing experience for me at a young age, and I've pursued that mission really my whole life. The reality is at Pharma, we've done a lot of work and research in our own capacity with very limited means, and I always have about 40 projects that I would like to be going forward with that are disabled by the current political reality. But that hasn't stopped us from advancing the most comprehensive chemotaxonomy. And what I mean is an ability to measure the compounds that are in the plant. 45 terpenoids, 22 kinds of cannabinoids, 15 kinds of THC. We're tracking all of that, and if anybody gives me money, they know it's going to go quickly to the lab because I have an unlimited list of questions and inquiries that the chemists are primarily bringing insight into. What this has allowed us to do at a dispensary is to be very targeted in treating patients in a specific fashion. We're looking to an evidence-based model and the best research that's happened out of Israel, from England, from human clinical trials, even back to Marinol, and essentially coming up with our own positions, interpreting that evidence, and trying to then look at the compounds and create formulations in a targeted way for different patient groups. I could line up a series of anecdotes from people that have been served at Pharma that would go well out into the park of people who would claim to have had the most significant quality of life improvement through the use of cannabinoids of any intervention they'd ever had in their entire life. And this is the reality of the therapeutic power of cannabis. Of course, you've already heard from a massive community in the OMMP testifying to this fact, but the reality is we're at a juncture now where I believe, and really the time I do believe is now, for Oregon to recognize that we actually have, other than Israel, the most advanced medical program anywhere with cannabis, which, sadly we're aware of is still relatively in the dark ages. We're not able to work with universities. There's incredible limitations, but we have an amazing integrity in our medical program. My belief is that if, with the right support at this juncture, using the unique structural advantages that Oregon has, for example, the most diverse genotypes in cannabis, the result of an extensive hybridization effort that's really compounded the kinds of sort of secondary metabolites, the kinds of drugs that the plant is producing in just an amazing fashion, and we're measuring this, and it really is true. Oregon sits on an incredible treasure trove of genotypes, but simultaneously we have the integrity of our medical program and unique scientific resources like the very first phylogenetic effort to understand the evolution of the plant and where the new cultivars will come from as we pursue new breeding programs that are targeted to making polypharmaceutical plants for unique patient populations. But I'm here to say that on behalf of Pharma and our local MMP community that I believe the impact we can have on the state, as Senator Kennedy brought up, is a kind of impact that is far more important in many ways than all of the emphasis on the recreational products and the industry associated with that. I consistently see this part of the story in a way get less attention and support than all of the economic benefit that will come in the near term from the recreational expression of cannabis. Anybody I've worked with for long enough, I can find pretty quickly what the therapeutic use was. But inevitably, there is a therapeutic dimension to cannabis for everybody who uses it. If it's to relieve stress, to facilitate creativity, to enhance intimacy, these are valid therapeutic concerns. But the reality is the people that we're serving, if it's a glioblastoma patient, or if it's a variety of different cancer and AIDS patients, this is where, with the right research and support, we're going to be able to shine as a state and become not only a very powerful force in our own right, but an inspiration to all the others that could benefit from this. So very grateful for these bills and just looking forward to more research immediately.
Appreciate that. Mr. Rockland.
Thank you. Testing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Hi, I'm Mike Rockland. And I'm a registered nurse. I'm a cannabis nurse specifically. I've been in the medical practice of nursing for over 30 years. And I'm here to testify on 479, Senate Bills 479 and 480, because I believe not not only are they the right things to do, but probably in a stepwise fashion, 479 might lead to a much better commission with 480 if it's done to set the stage, as it were, per Senator Edward. I have seen, and my specialty is more like pain management, but it's complex medical cases, and I've seen in my practice, more recently than not, patients actually able to deal with pain in a much in a conservative fashion rather than with pharmaceutical medication, which has a lot more toxic side effects, as well as surgery, which has obviously some more serious implications. Research drives practice. So what I'm saying is that we need the research. There's a lot of research out there, but primarily a lot of it on cannabis has been for prohibition, probably 90% of it that I'm aware of. There's been some research in Israel and other places around the world, but I'm not aware of it all being compiled in such of a clearinghouse, which this might be. That's why I'm in favor of these kind of bills, to really focus the effort in Oregon, like my colleagues have just stated, and to facilitate patient recovery with less toxic, more cost-effective type methods. And so I really support this, and I think that, again, 479 being a task force would set the stage for 480 being I would recommend it being a standing commission, like a clearinghouse, if you will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for this panel, colleagues? Okay, well, thank you all of you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Jennifer Valley, Aaron Purchase, and Patsy Myers, please. And then on deck we have Nick Clays, Jeff Sugarman, and Troy Morris. You may begin in any order. Please state your name for the record before you speak.
Sure. I'm Patsy Myers, and I'm one of the founders and owners of MRX Labs in Portland, Oregon. And I know I sound like a foreigner. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I moved here in 1979, and I have real Oregonian children. So I actually thought that tonight we would be speaking more broadly about testing and the laboratories and the oversight that is so badly needed for the laboratories. But I will add for the research just some things that I'm the most easygoing person you know, but when I feel strongly about something, you will know it. And one of the things that I believe as far as a commercial research license, I just would ask you to please not add to the cost of what that research will require. It will cost so much money, and we actually are. We are an analytical testing laboratory, but we're also a research development, design, and engineering company. And I know firsthand how very, very much this all costs. And I would just ask, please, when you're structuring any licenses, to please keep the cost low, because we will be spending a lot of money on our own, and I'm just asking that the burden isn't increased, by the licenses that are required. And also, I would ask you to please consider not putting any limits on a cap for THC. And the reason I ask this is because research has just begun, as the prior witnesses had. Oh, I forgot to thank y'all. I just realized. Thank you for having us. But as they were talking about, research has just begun, and Oregon will be at the forefront of that, even with private money. We will be at the forefront of that, but public money is going to help spearhead that and advance that. So what I was going to say about the THC caps, please consider not putting caps on THC. I don't even smoke marijuana. I don't consume marijuana, but I know how important that the combination of different levels of THC, different levels of the minor cannabinoids, and even different levels that are even just coming to light of the terpenes. People mostly think of terpenes in regard to the aromas, the smell, and the flavor, the taste. But even terpenes play a critical part in that combination of the different levels of THC, the minor cannabinoids, and the terpenes, and how they, especially now, with the help of being able to do the research, how they can be combined in different levels, different combinations, to start pinpointing what is most effective for illnesses, and especially as a baby boomer, and we are the biggest segment of the population, we are all going to be facing aches, pains, ailments, and worse, illnesses, and this marijuana product does have so much to offer, but it'll come from research, and it'll come from not having limitations that are going to hinder that. So I think that's about all I had to say.
Great.
If I think of anything else, can I jump back in when they get done?
I think thank you for offering your testimony. I think we're going to ask people to try to keep their comments below 4 minutes or so, so we have enough time for. That's all right. I didn't say it before. So that we have enough time for everyone, and we hopefully will have a chance for some questions and from the panel. So thank you so much.
Sorry, you guys.
No, you did great. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Erin Purchase, and I am from Oregon City. I am here to just share my perspective why I support Senate Bill 479 and 480. As I have told you all in the past, in 2012, when my 7-year-old was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, I got her on cannabis soil 10 days after she was diagnosed. And she didn't suffer nearly as many side effects as the average children at Randall Children's Hospital here in Portland. I had several families come up and ask me what I gave to my kid and how did they get it. Now, Michaela was the very first kid, and now there's tons of kids up there using this cannabis oil with great success. But when I approached our oncologist and told her we were using medical cannabis oil, she became very angry and called me criminal and offered to transfer me to another hospital because she could not agree with me using medical cannabis on my daughter, even though she was happy and smiling and healthy. But that's because the FDA prevents her from being able to accept cannabis. So she says there's no studies, and when I do present a study to her, she says it's done on animals and it can't be done on humans yet. There's no denying anymore that this plant is providing extreme miracles all over this country. It brings tears to my eyes every day. I hear from multiple families and kids, and there's so many adults. I just mainly work with children. It's a shame to not begin research on this, and it's a shame that families have to feel criminalized or like they're doing something bad when the medical establishment oftentimes have nothing left to offer us, and they turn to cannabis. Instead, the doctors should be able to support this treatment, and in order to do that, we have to begin research. So I think these bills are really going to set a groundwork where we can begin looking at the different types of products and what they do for certain conditions, and I think it can help open the eyes to many doctors here in our local area as well. Patients deserve to be open with their physicians. I think this board would help accommodate that. So thank you for having me.
That's great. Thank you. Right.
Thank you. Madam Chairs, members of the committee, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Jennifer Valley. I'm from Happy Valley, Oregon. And I cured my cancer 5 years ago using cannabis oil. And when I did that, I said to my doctor, look, you can't do double-blind placebo studies. You can't do clinical trials. But You also can't stop people from joining the medical marijuana program. And my opponents to this program claim that this program turns us into a bunch of crazy drug addicts. And what if they're right? We have a responsibility to let them know. And with the healthcare transformation we're going through, the legislature is going to want doctors to document outcomes so that we can have evidence-based treatment. So while you're teaching the kids coming up, I want you to start training them to know that your patient is on medical marijuana and document the outcomes so that we can see what happens, because I don't know. And if you should happen to notice that tumors are disappearing, that should make it into your findings, because that's important. So we have at least 5 years of data that we could mine if we chose to do this kind of research. We could even do 15 years of data if we went back and did studies on every patient in the OMMP. But I think it's very important that we start exploring this, because medical marijuana addresses the 3 primary drivers of healthcare costs. That's pain management, chronic disease management, and end-of-life care. And as one of the 10% of Oregonians who used to generate 69% of our healthcare costs, I've been able to really shrink those numbers by, I would say, at least 85%, because I'm not going to the emergency room 10 times a year anymore. I'm not spending 50 hours a year at my doctor's office, not spending hours and hours at the pharmacy anymore, because I went from 35 pills a day down to 2. And because of that, I've gained 50 pounds because now I can eat. So I know that we're seeing huge impacts on many, many different medical conditions, and I believe that this research board will make it possible for us to do local research that can't be done with NIDA material, because let's be honest, there is not an Oregonian that would tolerate NIDA quality cannabis. It is disgusting, horrible trash, and we really should study what we're actually consuming. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any questions for this panel?
Don't run.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Nick Clace, Jeff Sugarman, and Troy Morris with Brad Thompson, Lucas Littlefield, and Lindsay Reinhardt on deck, please.
Good to go?
Yes, you are. And if you need to go over 4 minutes, it looks like we got a little time here. So.
I may take less, but...
Okay, but you're welcome to take less also.
Thank you for having me. My name's Nick Clace. I'm the co-founder and CEO of BML Horticulture. We're a company out of Austin, Texas, so actually I applaud for what you're doing up here from a research, because our political climate's a little bit different in Texas, and we're a little bit lagging. So we are up here. My company does custom LED lighting solutions, and we were focused on the horticulture market. So we spend a lot of time with both feeding the world's population with indoor agriculture using LED lights in controlled environment. A lot of food production in the future will be grown in warehouses close to the population. We use up to 50% less energy, up to 18% less water. And what I wanted to just throw out there today from a technology perspective, we're highly aligned as a company with universities all around the world on how does light and different wavelengths affect plant morphology and development. So the reason I'm up here today actually is working with the pharma team, because they're at the cutting edge of trying to understand how do we change the different components of cannabis in the plant. So we're talking about medicine, so we should be looking deeper and saying, well, what is the medicinal value? It's not just cannabis, right? It's the components within the plant. And so we know on the non-cannabis agriculture world, again, working with a lot of universities, like for instance fruit, we can use certain wavelengths to increase the vitamin C content in that plant. And so we can use less energy, use less water, and actually change the compounds within the plant. On the cannabis side, we're really handcuffed as a company and a lot of times because of the research. We have a lot of, can't name names, but a lot of people even at the university level, they want to study this plant. They want to understand, just like they can do on all these other plants that they're growing. And we have that toolkit. And so it just seems that if we're talking about medicine for the benefit of people, then we should have smarter technology available to understand how do we change the morphology and the development of a plant using less water, using less energy, and just doing it a lot smarter. I'm an 8-year cancer survivor I'm from Ohio. I didn't have cannabis as available at that time, so I did chemotherapy and radiation. But I did take some very, very advanced drugs that were grown in labs, just like breakthrough type technology. And I would have never, I may not be here today, had a researcher not had access to growing that type of drug. And so I think that if we're talking about cannabis and we're talking about a medicine aspect of it, it just seems that we should be able to have more research available. And I can tell you, the people that we're working with, our partners, some of them, they're so scared to even talk about it, and that's just not right. So I applaud you for what you're doing here and furthering the research, because we have technology and we have tools. And I think you guys are in a position to be world-class leaders in this and allowing that R&D to go forward. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Co-chair and members of this Implementing 91 committee, thank you so much for having me. My name is Troy Morris. I'm from Lane County, Representative Olson's district, and I am in support of Senate Bill 480 and 479. Just for the record, I was the person who contacted Senator Edwards and exposed him to our research project in Eugene. So ultimately, that's basically the big statement. I really hope that everybody here can already see that research is necessary for decision making. Because this is the committee for 91, it seems like you guys are running into a lot of hassles because people don't understand marijuana. They don't understand cannabinoids. They don't understand a good deal of it. And so it's very difficult to make good decisions based on the lack of information, even though I applaud the effort to try to do so. It leads to a lot of tumultuous because it's all based on beliefs, and those beliefs are often founded in nothing. So in October of '09, I founded MX Research, a program to investigate marijuana, because if it was a medicine, it should perform like one. And it clearly does not, except for a few cases that are here and there that almost have miraculous level results. So my question, with a background in chemical engineering and organic synthetic chemistry, was why? And so I started developing programs based on HIV drug development and rational drug design that would ultimately treat cannabis like a medicine, using patient outcome studies, using DERP, drug effectiveness review programs, to identify what about it was actually working for one person out of 1 million people or one person out of 10,000 that Facebook could bring together simply because of our interconnectedness, but could never be duplicated. And what we found is, for the most part, everything that you know about cannabis is incorrect if you're trying to achieve an end goal. If somebody comes to us and asks us to identify if we can help them identify a profile that is grown by a grower, subject to a genetic, applied different environments and different inputs and constraints, when you're done, percent THC means pretty much nothing, because there's 60 THCs. There's not one. And CBD's, which is another compound, is actually a family of 20 other cannabinoids whose binding coefficient means that it neither helps your neural system or your immune system. So pretty much everything around cannabis is kind of backwards, which might be one of the reasons why we have cannabis in Oregon for so long, yet nobody knows anything about it. So we started investigating this efficacy based on end results, not on the use of cannabis. And what we found is, often the most effective dose for a person who's trying to achieve an outcome is maybe 1 million times less than somebody smoking a joint. Again, because cannabinoids are low modulating. They're non-persistent. Those are technical terms for the opposite of everything that you know. Where alcohol is a persistent binder, it means more is more. In cannabis, less is more. And so what we found is that there was these very specific dosing windows that meant that you would achieve nothing, achieve optimal mitigation, and then lose that mitigation. And so what we found is, for the most part, the science is there. It's called structure-activity relationship sciences, or you guys know it as medicine chemistry. So this is what we ultimately presented to Senator Edwards, was the proof of our program and the approach to get there using what we call a lean medicinal canvas, where we lay out absolutely everything that we do, step by step by step by step by step by step by step, all the decision-making processes on a big board, so people can actually see the implementation of matching a profile with a particular health issue and then measuring that in an evidence-based way. What I mean by is maybe we'd send them to Dornbeckers. Maybe we'd send them up to OHSU, and that information might then go back to Vanderbilt because they were here for 30 days participating in the Oregon Medical Program. we've basically worked with a little over 4,100 patients. So our population is fairly significant. And this is why I think it's so important to investigate cannabis, because a good deal of what everybody's running on maybe not be accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, Co-Chair Leininger and Burdick, members of the committee, my name is Jeff Sugarman. I am here today representing the Oregon Cannabis PAC. The Oregon Cannabis PAC supports the establishment of a task force to make recommendations to the legislature on improving the medical marijuana program with a specific focus on helping patients. During these decades of prohibition, excuse me, even as states have approved medical marijuana laws, there remains a huge gap in the research necessary to aid patients with their conditions. So while there are numerous patient stories, some of which you heard today, on how specific strains help specific conditions, there remains in the United States a huge dearth of information, research-based information. So Oregon, with its long-established medical program, can and should become a leader in this type of research. As we learn more about the effects of different cannabinoids on different conditions, from helping to control seizures to attacking cancerous tumors, will help inform patients, growers, processors, and dispensaries on what works best. We particularly like the portion that requires a look at research that's been done in other countries. In addition, this task force can provide guidance on establishing the right kind of research programs and help improve communications throughout the industry on strain varieties, growing techniques, and other critical needs. Many of those in the medical marijuana program today have developed great knowledge and great understanding about the use of particular strains and its impact on certain conditions, and we really encourage their participation in this task force. We also believe that bringing in new voices, as outlined in Senate Bill 480, experienced in research protocols, experienced in medical conditions, and grant writing and communications and more, will aid us as we move forward with both the medical and the adult use programs. We also support the establishment of a specific research license under the medical program to help spur this research industry. We want to thank Senator Edwards for his work on this issue, and we will provide any assistance we can in the establishment of this new task force. And we thank you very much.
Senator Ferrioli.
Have you, any of you gentlemen, or any of the witnesses that will testify on these two bills, formed an opinion about who ought to be the administrator of the license? You know, what should be the licensing authority and who should be the licensing agency? You know, we've had a lot of discussions about the Oregon Liquor Control Commission as the licensing agency for virtually all the licenses that we've discussed. Other folks have suggested that OMMA, the Oregon Medical Marijuana Authority, or Oregon Health Authority. Have you formed any opinions about who ought to be the licensure administrator and the licensing agency? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is anyone on the dais interested? And then we can go to Mr. Holmes afterwards.
I can take a crack at that.
Great.
Co-Chair Leininger, Senator Ferrioli. I think it's actually a great question for the task force to look into as they move forward. But as you're looking at different aspects of the industry, testing is another very good example. I think there's going to be some decisions to put some portions of this new law or this new program into the Oregon Health Authority. I think the research component is one that would fit very nicely in there. So I would say that would be a good starting point and something that we certainly could get some recommendations from this task force on.
Thank you, Madam
Chair. Mr. Holmes, did you want to add a comment? If so, we'll need you to come forward and give your name for the record and speak into a microphone.
Mowgli Holmes, thank you. I just wanted to say that, again, it's important to see that there's two arms. There's public research and there's commercial research, and they really are separable. Public companies like mine, like Mr. Clays's lighting company, we would push forward a lot of public health research, and we would push forward industry innovation research as well if we had a commercial license. The OLCC can easily license commercial entities to allow them to do this kind of stuff. The public health research needs to be run by a scientific body within the state. It would have to be run by the OHA, I believe. And if there's a commercial license that's separate, that would fit well into the OHA, but the OLCC could do it without any huge drawbacks. That's our position.
Okay. Representative Olson, did you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, actually, Mr. Holmes, why don't you just stay there, because actually I was going to spin off of thought that you had said when you testified earlier, and I wanted to have Mr. Morris kind of jump in on this too, because you'd said toward the end of your testimony initially, it's more complicated than what we know. Now I'm listening to Mr. Morris here just now testify, and I mean he's going into some detail that, well, it's above my pay grade here right now. And I'm just curious both your thoughts on this. I mean, where do we go from here with all this?
Well, when you say complicated, I think he was talking about how scientifically complicated it is. I was trying to focus on how regulatorily complicated it is. So, which one of those are you aiming at?
I think I can get a handle on the regulatory part of it.
Right. Good.
I think I know how to do that.
That's great. I don't have a handle on that yet. So you want to talk about how scientifically complicated
Absolutely.
it is? All right. So let me just say this. The reason why it's so complicated compared to the normal pharmaceutical world, right? I think everyone who is familiar with traditional medicine finds it a little goofy that we're talking about using this plant as medicine. You know, I mean, I think initially everyone was thinking, well, why don't you just purify the CBD and we'll give it to the people who have epilepsy and we'll be done with all this silliness. The reason why that's not happening is partly because we don't have even the most basic research. But the other reason is that pharmaceutical companies are in a bad way lately. They're having an incredible shortage of lead molecules as drug candidates. They've put in more billions of dollars in the last 20 years, and every year got back less drugs. And these single molecule drugs that we've relied on in the pharmaceutical world for so long, it's like we got all the low-hanging fruit. So even pharmaceutical companies are looking back towards natural products chemistry, which spans this much greater region of chemical shape space. And you asked me to get complicated. So cannabis is a plant that humans have been using for different things for 10,000 years. It produces a whole series of small molecules that occupy chemical shape space that fits with a whole series of receptors in our body in the endocannabinoid system. And it's a plant that's been pre-selected to have this library of molecules that interacts with receptors that affect our immune system and our nervous system and our metabolic system. And it's a treasure trove of lead compounds. And unfortunately, every one of them that we've identified so far seems to work in combination with several others. So there's a lot of research now demonstrating that THC is not well tolerated by itself. But in the presence of CBD, it works better. And those combinatorial effects are getting more and more complicated in the peer-reviewed research already. So I think we'll get to purified normal medical compounds in 7 or 10 years. But for now, it's a complicated pharmaceutical problem, and this complicated plant is the best delivery mechanism we have.
Okay. Any more questions for this panel? So you got all that. I'll just ask you
Oh,
later.
absolutely. I got about 3 lines right here.
I could have told him that.
Yeah. Troy?
Got it down.
So when you start talking about molecule for molecule, you start talking about all possibilities. But one of the things that you can do is take a systematic approach. And really the endocannabinoid system is either involved in the mismitigation of an issue or it's not. Right? So there's either an impact that it has, kind of like the electrical system, either causing a problem or it's not causing a problem. And then what you need is a fuse, usually, to fix an outage because the lightning struck or something like this, and we have misregulation of a system. So there's some interesting things that are extremely complicated, but the fact is that cannabinoids are running on an endocannabinoid system, a major regulatory system that is unique and natural to the human being. And so it's fairly easy to quantify an approach or a protocol. That's what we've been doing for a while, just to be able to demonstrate. And we've been trying to shop a research bill for a little while, so I'm super excited that you guys are listening to this one. But the fact is that it's not that complicated. And this is low-hanging fruit. And when we see mitigation, we're talking about 85% reduction or none. We don't really see a lot of 20% reduction in an issue. And so what's exciting about this is that although there's a lot of nuances to it, the functional aspects about this are exciting because they're safe, they don't change brain chemistry sensitivities, and it really opens up a whole nother area, which means that the real thing that's sitting in front of Oregon is, one, the novel research. Yes, I love it. I keep doing it. I can't stop. But the fact is there's more money in intellectual property for Oregon than there is in weed sales. Right? So the baggie of weed or that pound of weed that we're arguing whether or not it's worth $2,000 could turn into a $100,000 solution that insurance companies could pay for $500 at a time, offsetting a $50,000 treatment, because we have Pope data that suggests that when it's matched, the average Oregonian saves the state of Oregon about $57,000 a year. Okay. When it's not, they don't. And so it's these kinds of things that are super exciting because it is kind of complicated, but at the same time, it's totally tackable. We've been doing it for a little while.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any follow-up questions to that? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we have our next panel of. Did we just had Brad Thompson up? Is that correct?
No.
Okay, great. So we'll have Brad Thompson, Lucas Littlefield, and Lindsay Reinhardt. And then on deck we have Jess McKinney, PK, and John Sajo. So go in whatever order you like, but please begin by stating your name for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, co-chairs and committee. My name is Lindsay Reinhardt. I am with One Draw 2 Medical Dispensary in Portland. I dispense medication to patients that need it often. And one of the things that I find awesome about this, and thank you so much for discussing this and being interested. The patients of Oregon, thank you. This is amazing. I love it. I told you last time that I moved here for Oregon's medical marijuana program. And this is why. This is amazing. So I'm really happy right now. It's very refreshing after leaving oppression to come somewhere where it's medicine. It's very nice. I went to a conference here in Oregon in May. It was called Patients Out of Time, and it was a cutting-edge leading conference that happens every year. Oregon got to be a host of it, and I was very grateful to go. It was continuing education credits for lawyers, doctors, and nurses, and then we were also welcomed as activists and writers to be there as well. And the communication that you get to have with these doctors that are doing continuing education and the people that are leading the research in the field that came and gave the lectures from like Israel, when you're on the front end of that, treating the patients that they are studying in their lab, and you're trying to go off of anecdotal evidence, it's very difficult to treat people. I founded one of the first cannabis and multiple sclerosis groups in the country on Facebook, of all places, a few years ago. Now I have 3,000 multiple sclerosis patients that treat with cannabis in that group, because I have multiple sclerosis and treat with cannabis, and only cannabis. In fact, since moving to Oregon, I'm off 22 pills and only use cannabis to treat my illness. I don't feel my liver anymore, I don't feel my kidneys anymore, and I'm in full remission, which is very exciting for me. When I have to treat other patients, I face constrictions in the dispensing setting. I can't advise them on dosage because the FDA will not allow me to advise on dosage. I cannot advise them necessarily on what strains are going to work best for them because everybody's endocannabinoid system receives cannabinoids differently, and different plants work on different illnesses. And so often we have to remember to remind patients that it is the practice of medicine. And often doctors have to practice to find what medication works best on a patient. So if you look at something like depression, they will go through frequently multiple antidepressants before they find the right antidepressant to treat that patient and get them to respond. In cannabis, it's often the same thing. We have to encourage a patient to come back and try different methods of ingestion. So like I eat oil every day, and I also smoke cannabis to mitigate the symptoms of my spasms that I have. I take tinctures pressure sometimes to deal with other things too. And different patients need different methods of ingestion. They also need different strains. And so we often have to tell them to rely on their own body to tell them what they need. And I've heard other comments tonight that kind of I think we should address. Cannabis should be one of the first choices we go to as medicine, not one of the last. There is plenty of supporting evidence to show that it works as a valid medicine for many, many people. And I think that Oregon is in a prime spot. This committee is in a prime spot to change history and make something spectacular happen. And so I really think that we should implement this. And also, on number 12, the members of the task force aren't entitled to compensation. And clearly this is a very complicated discussion. And so the people that have the expertise to deal with this, I do believe should be compensated. Okay. And that's really my only comment.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Who would like to go next?
I will. Co-chairs, committee, thank you so much for taking the time to hear what we all have to say this evening. We think that this is very important, and I'm a little nervous, but I really appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to what we have to say.
You could state your name for the record.
Okay, my name is Brad Thompson.
Great, thank you.
Yes, and I'm set to be a senior at Oregon State University next year to complete a communications degree. And probably the most important thing that I've learned at my studies at Oregon State is the importance of research. Any dream that I might have can be realized through the power of research. And I want to speak today on what research and education can do for our state. I mean, just a few minutes ago with that last panel, we all kind of got an education, and I can't speak to what those guys were talking about, but I can say that education and marijuana research, what it does for our state and what it does for our citizens, it gives us competent citizens. Medical marijuana research gives us, it reduces liability, facilitates public safety, and creates sustainable solutions. Solutions like the labeling and dosing issues that are coming up, what is too much and what to overdose, and how to label, things to make sure that people are getting safe products. Sustainable solutions for our economy, creating jobs and giving our state a strategic positioning and a competitive advantage in what is soon to be multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry coming up here. Research and education also facilitates public safety through compliance of the law, and that's by the dispensaries, the recreational users, the OMMP card holders, minors, and our law enforcement agencies. I believe that education is the key. Research gives us information that we need to make educated decisions. Our level of education shows the next generation where we are, and research provides the vehicle to show them where we can go. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Madam Co-Chairs and Joint Committee, again, we thank you all for being here. We know it's a lot that you guys have taken on. My name is Lucas Littlefield, for the record, and I'm here to speak about the future. We have an opportunity, as has been mentioned today, to really take this research by the horns. Bears don't have horns. We can take this research and move forward with it into a very, very large potential industry. Recreational sales of marijuana do draw in revenue. This has been seen in Colorado and Washington. It may not be super successful, but it is drawing in revenue at some level. If and when we can apply cannabis with expected outcomes, we will win. And what I mean by win is Oregon will be at the forefront, the leader of the nation in research, development, and application of cannabis as a medicine. We're not there yet, and in order to get there, we need to figure out what cannabis is, what it can do, and what it cannot do. So research, as Bills 479 and 480 will allow for, is definitely needed. Again, thank you very much for your time today.
Great. Thank you for being here. Any questions for the panel? All right, then. We have our final panel for the evening, Jess McKinney, PK, and John Sajo.
Madam Chair, I'd like to testify with my friend Elvie Musica, who brought with me. Can I do that?
Yes, why don't we have, you're Mr. Sajo?
Yes.
Okay, let's have Jess McKinney and PK up first because we have 3 spots here and we want to make sure everyone has a comfortable chair. Thank you. Sure thing. Speak in any order, but please begin by stating your name.
My name is Jess McKinney, and mostly I was really excited to come here tonight. I wanted to thank you for hearing us. I think that cannabis research is extremely needed and beneficial. I think it's needed to be on record. I think a lot of the research is out there. Oregon has a huge patient base that has been researching it, that you've approved since 1998, so I would really like to encourage you to look at what is already here in front of you, where you can get experiences that people have had. I also was very encouraged that Senator Edwards gave you an example of a story with a child. I think it's important for this plant to be researched for children. I think it'd be very beneficial. Slightly on that note, my maternal instinct tells me that maybe a lot of ADD issues could be solved with cannabis, but I'm just, it's just kind of from what I've seen. I also want to just thank you for your great listening skills. I feel listened to when I come in front of you, and I have spoke on some local levels. I have felt very disrespected and not listened to. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity to feel very positive about something that I see coming up, because I give a lot of testimony against bills that I see, because I want to see this plant respected. And I think that research will give that plant respect. So when you're having a hard time making decisions about, does the OLCC rule, I'm not sure if I should make this rule, the research I think would help give you validity to your decisions also. So I don't want to see you put it off because you're dealing with a lot, as the Senator Edwards had said earlier. I would really kind of like to see you take hold of it and use it to your advantage. So again, I thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair and council members. My name is Pete Kramer, PK. I'm with Mercy TV. I film these things so the people can see what's happening. It's a local station, but we do get on the YouTube as well. Research is important because there's a lot of good points of the cannabis plant. We should have been using a long time ago. We have it. I believe it'll cure cancer. With the we were asking who should take the I think the OMMP would, because they have the experience of ripping off the patients for lots of money. And maybe having the OLCC handle a little bit, but
okay.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for having this hearing about the education and the. I love you all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
May I add something to my testimony?
We've got two witnesses coming up. If you had 30 seconds,
Super quick,
you need
I'm
to
so
reintroduce
sorry. You had
yourself
asked
for
the
the
question
record.
about who you thought maybe should brought it up. I don't necessarily see it as an OLCC issue because I see it as a health issue, and so I would like to see medical research.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So we have two final witnesses. Did you have a question?
Just a comment as the new other witnesses come in. Just to clarify for the record, Madam Co-Chair and members, the OHA and the medical marijuana program should not be blamed for the fees placed on patients. That was a legislative decision. I just want to be clear on that. You can't blame the OHA for that. That was a legislative decision. Just so you know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And I helped make it,
So
unfortunately.
you can blame Representative Buckley.
Send those cards and letters.
Send those cards and letters.
Thank you both. Welcome.
Co-Chair Leininger, Co-Chair Burdick, members of the committee. My name is John Sajo. I'm the Executive Director of the Umpqua Cannabis Association, and it's my pleasure to testify before you again today. I'm here in support of the bills to create a task force or a commission. I think research is sorely needed. I've been advocating for it for many years, so I hope you can do that, and I hope we can fund some research that I think is necessary. Echo the points made by some earlier speakers. One of the problems with a lot of the research out there done by the federal government and NIDA is that most of it has been designed to find harms from marijuana and not benefits. And if you're a researcher, you weren't going to get your next study funded if you didn't find harmful effects. So the research has been skewed politically for years. Another point that I think is important is the research, all research done by the federal government on marijuana has been done on marijuana that my friend and one of the 4 patients that receives marijuana from the federal government gets from that Mississippi farm. It's basically what we here in Oregon would call swag. They take whole marijuana plants and grind them up, including seeds, sticks, stems, leaves, and roll it into pre-rolled cigarettes that they send out to the 4 remaining patients in that program, and also to all the researchers in the country. And pretty much all the research that's been done on marijuana has been done on this product that most patients wouldn't smoke at all.
Okay.
So I think that's a serious thing. I think what we need is research done on the marijuana products that Oregonian patients and adult users are able to buy in the stores.
Okay.
Most of the research done on marijuana has involved smoked marijuana. Increasingly, people are using edibles and concentrates, and there's virtually nothing on those subjects. So I would encourage Oregon to fund serious studies on the marijuana that people are actually going to be using.
Okay.
Another part of it is I think people have made claims that subsidizing patients' medical marijuana use by the Oregon Health Plan will save money because of a common story that you've heard many times is that people are able to reduce their use of other expensive medications. I think that's an important thing to look at. If it turns out to be true that we would actually save money by providing subsidized marijuana to people, I think we'd be crazy not to do that. And rather than rely on anecdotes, we should have science to look at that question. And I think there's a lot of research we need on the best agricultural practices. We apparently can't turn to OSU or the Extension Service to tell us, is this pesticide safe or how should it be used? We need research on that. So there really are many areas where we need the research, and I hope this committee will follow Colorado's lead. Colorado just earmarked $9 million for studies, and in my written testimony I included a list of studies that have been approved there, and they range from Parkinson's to PTSD. And I think that Oregon should coordinate with other states that are doing research and get the most bang for our buck.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and also for all the wonderful things you have done in this beautiful state that I now call home.
Thanks.
Proudly.
If you could please state your name for the record, that would be great.
Okay, my name is Elvie Musica, and currently there really are only 2 patients receiving medical marijuana from the federal government. I have been a medical marijuana patient for 40 years now. From the federal government, I have been receiving this dosage for a month's supply now for 26 and a half years. And the reason I'm bringing that up specifically is because if there was any harm in this plant, I think we would definitely see the results after 26 and a half years of using it steadily.
Okay.
The results were immediately. I dropped one of those 2 packs of cigarettes that would have killed me, like they have most of my friends. And as I grew older, I acquired a whole bunch of little things like arthritis and insomnia, things that go with age. The glaucoma came to me early, and that is why I received marijuana from the federal government. But I want you to know, for 11 years, I did really great on it, but had to take at least 12 grams a day. I started working in the Northwest. I worked with you 20 years ago, and beyond that, when you did start your new laws. And that's what I do with my life all the time. I am proud to say I'm 75 years old, and there is not even an aspirin in my medicine cabinet. I know I'm saving you money there because, unfortunately, I am your dependent. There was a lady with a powder nose telling me to just say no, so I couldn't look for a job that would keep me from keeping whatever side I was fighting for dear life. 3 years ago, as you all know, your fees went up, and the government decided to send me hemp, not cannabis with THC at that particular joint, and the results were disastrous. I ended up losing part of an eye that I had maintained for 37 years, had increased the vision from 2400 to 2160, all down the drain because someone didn't think I should have THC.
So thank you so much. We, if you have additional comments on the bills that are open for public hearing on research, that'd be great. We sure appreciate your testimonial about your experience. It's very
Thank
amazing.
you for the opportunity, and yes, thank you for researching it. It needs to be out there. And please beg your president for an executive order to put an end to the substance control, because you'll never have valid research until that's done. Please, please, as a body, send that request.
All right.
Join all the others.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, that was a lot of really interesting, illuminating testimony. We have no more witnesses scheduled for today, so I'm going to close the public hearing on these two bills. It's 6:15. This is the business that we have before us for officially scheduled for this evening. Chair Burdick, would you like to make a comment on our Monday meeting?
Yes, Madam Chair, we will have a meeting on Monday, and our agenda is constantly in flux. Adam, let me get some help from you on this because we've gone back and forth.
Madam Co-Chairs, members of the committee, presently for Monday we have a possible work session on Senate Bill 844 to discuss further amendments to that bill, the technical fix bill as it is often referred to. If there are any further changes to that agenda, you will see them through OLIS and through the EAP subscribe system as they are made.
Yes, the plan is that we have had some work groups going, and we will be talking about amendments and are just using 844 as a vehicle to discuss substantive amendments, perhaps on labs and land use if we have that available. So just check OLIS. Don't look at the underlying bill. Just look at the amendments because those will be the subject of discussion, and it will be open for public hearing.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I will be posting some draft amendments to 844 so that the members of the committee will be aware and so that members of the public can discuss the issue of a temporary retail opportunity for clinics during the interim between the time of July 1st, 2015, when Oregonians will be legally able to possess and use recreational marijuana, and the period under which the Oregon Liquor Control Commission will be developing regulations for the retail outlets, licensure for growing, and et cetera. And this is something we've all discussed before. This temporary authority would allow retail purchases at dispensaries during that interim period between the required rulemaking and the licensure for grow sites.
Yes.
So
Okay. And Senator Ferrioli and I will be discussing what's the appropriate time because we have to get the lab discussion done, and if we have to, we'll put the others off till the next meeting.
Okay. With that, I'll close the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.